Today, we're going to dive into the incredible 130-plus-year story of an organization that started out as a small group of thinkers and grew into a political force that would literally define a nation, the Indian National Congress.
So that raises a really interesting question, right? How does a protest movement, just an idea really, transform into a political dynasty that ends up shaping the destiny of over 1 billion people? Well, the answer is a wild story of evolution, conflict, and revolution.
To really get a grip on the Congress Party of today, you gotta go way back to the very beginning. So, let's explore how this whole movement was born. Okay, so picture this. It's December 1885 in Bombay. The very first meeting of the Indian National Congress wasn't some massive rally. Nope, it was a pretty small, focused gathering of just 72 delegates. I mean, talk about a humble beginning for what would become an absolute political giant.
And here's the kicker. Their initial goal, it wasn't about kicking the British out. Not yet, anyway. The main objective was actually just to get a bigger say in the government for educated Indians. To have more of a voice in how things were run.
And this is what's so wild about how it started. The people who kicked this off were a mix of Indian nationalists like the great Dadabhai Naoroji and, believe it or not, some British folks like Alan Octavian Hume. It actually started as a collaboration, a dialogue.
But, that kind of unity, it was never going to last. As the movement got bigger, so did the disagreements inside of it, which led to its first huge conflict, the battle between the moderates and the extremists.
Fast forward to 1907, and those small cracks, they'd blown up into a massive split. The Indian National Congress was now pretty much a house divided, breaking into two completely separate groups with very different ideas on how to move forward.
And this, right here, lays out the whole divide perfectly. On one side, you have the Naram Dal, the soft faction, led by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. They believed in working within the British system, petitions and gradual reform. But on the other side, you had the Garam Dal, the hot faction, led by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. And they were totally done with asking nicely. They wanted self-rule, Swaraj, and they were ready to use boycotts and direct action to get it.
In this hot faction, they were led by this powerhouse trio, a group known all across India as Lal, Bal, and Pal. That's Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal. These guys really represented that rising tide of more aggressive nationalism.
So the party's at a crossroads, right? It's fractured, it's arguing with itself. And right at this moment, a figure arrives on the scene who would not just heal the divide, but completely change the entire movement. This was the start of the Gandhian Revolution.
So Mahatma Gandhi comes back to India, and he brings this game-changing new idea with him, Satyagraha. And this wasn't just passive resistance. It was an active, super-strategic art of non-violent revolution. It was like a moral weapon that the British had no idea how to fight.
And this is absolutely crucial. When Gandhi took the reins of the Congress in 1920, it stopped being this elite club of lawyers and intellectuals. He took the message right to the villages, to the farmers, to the everyday person, and he transformed it into a powerful mass organization that represented millions of people. And he didn't just talk about it, right? He put this massive movement into action. You can see his 3 huge nationwide campaigns here. First, the non-cooperation movement in the 20s. Then, the civil disobedience movement in the 30s. And finally, the ultimate call to action, the Quit India movement in 1942.
So now, with all this power, with millions of people behind them, the goal of the Congress got laser-focused. The debate was over. The objective was crystal clear: complete independence.
This all came to a head at the huge 1929 Lahore session. The whole movement was just electrified by this brand new, totally uncompromising goal: Purna Swaraj. It's a Hindi term that means complete independence, full self-rule. This wasn't asking for more autonomy anymore. This was a demand for total freedom.
And to really hammer this point home, they did something incredibly bold. On January 26, 1930, led by their president Jawaharlal Nehru, the INC just went ahead and symbolically declared India independent. Now, the British didn't recognize it, of course, but for millions of Indians, this was a massive statement. There was no going back. In fact, that date was so important, it was later chosen to be India's Republic Day. Okay, so the goal is set, the movement is united, and the pressure on the British is just immense. This brings us to the final chapter of the independence struggle, that incredible switch from protest to power.
And then, after decades and decades of struggle, it happened.
August 15th, 1947, India is finally independent. I mean, think about it. The protest movement had actually won. And the Indian National Congress, the group that led the whole fight, became the nation's very first ruling party.
Just look at this list. It shows you the incredible political dominance of the Congress Party after independence. The first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, he served for 17 years. Then you had leaders like his daughter, Indira Gandhi, and his grandson, Rajiv Gandhi. All in all, 7 prime ministers came from the Congress Party, pretty much running India for most of its modern history. The movement? Yeah, it had officially become a dynasty.
And this is where we end, with a really big question that kind of hangs over the party's modern legacy. After a movement achieves its ultimate goal, after the fight is won and you've got your independence, what's your purpose then? How do you redefine yourself for a whole new era? That's the question that continues to shape the story of the Indian National Congress even today.